Right, our next session is being delivered by the wonderful Barry from Whitney Radio, who's going to talk about however many relays he's got. No, he's going to talk about the power of relays and growing your audience.
Why is it funny? It's not funny. Relays are serious.
Than anyone. How many are you on at the moment?
I might have more than anybody else in England. Not Wales, though.
What's your secret?
The Welsh.
The Welsh.
Yeah, they beat me. Good afternoon. My name is Barry. I had nothing to do with radio until 2012 when one of my projects I was working on called Whitney TV. It was great. It was really good. I believe the future of TV wasn't that box in the corner, but an iPad. But you had to dress up for it. And like today, I don't like dressing up. So I started an online radio station, which was fantastic. That light's really fast on that camera. On one frequency, which was 99.9, which turned out was a frequency that another CR rejected. They didn't want to be too close to classic FM. So Red Kite got another frequency, and I was very happy with 99.9. However, there were some areas, West Oxfordshire it's got pockets of population. Chipper Norton, obviously everybody now knows Chipper Norton through the Chipper Norton set, the likes of Clarkson and Alex James and David Cameron, I think his name is. But they all live there, and that was an area I wanted to cover. Nothing to do with the fact it's 233 metres above sea level, and you can see most of the county from it. So I said I'd like to have a relay there. And that's what Sue was inferring to by saying, could you hold on a couple of months and apply for a relay? So we did. And it was quite good. COVID came. We paid business rates. And we got the COVID grants. And rather than keeping it in the bank, as my accountant said, to which you'll be taxed on, I decided to spend it. So we put a relay in Chipper Norton on 107.4. I put a relay in a village called Ensham, which was 105.3, because I knew opposite Ensham, in the next 10 years, there would be 7,000 houses being built at Salt Cross, so that would get bigger. I then thought, well, hang on a minute, this is actually quite easy. We tried some different things about how to get the signal to various parts of West Oxfordshire. So I thought, well, let's do some more. So we then applied for Farringdon and Woodstock, because that covered Woodstock and Kidlington. Obviously, Blenheim Palace is a massive tourist attraction. And then I just thought, well, let's complete the circle, because Ofcom like continuation of service. They don't like gaps. So I said, I've got a big gap just there. And they said, OK, so we now fill in all the way to Stow-on-the-Wold, which is out of county, and we go into the Cotswolds. Just so I can see, put your hand up if you're on an FM station. Keep your hand up if you've only got one transmitter. Are you thinking?
Yeah. No.
You've only got one transmitter?
No.
You've got two?
I'll get back to you.
OK, that's fine. Have you got one frequency? OK, that's fine. The reason is it's free. It's completely free to have power increases and relays and extensions. So why wouldn't anybody want to do it? It is the best thing in the world. We saw certain areas which I didn't plan on, such as Chipper Norton with its 25 watts but being 233 metres high, go a long, long way. And we then received advertising from people who were in sales, driving around West Oxfordshire, and they could find Whitney, and it stayed Whitney all the time they were driving round. And that meant people like the roof light company that make those things came to me and said, could you advertise our jobs, please? Because we need staff. So that's what we did, and it worked really well. They then invested in bigger campaigns selling those, and then their competition took adverts because they sell them as well. And then other people heard us do employment adverts, so they came along and they did it as well. I suppose the big lesson for me with relays is our smallest relay is 780 people in a tiny village. 3 tiny villages called the Under Wychwood, Shipton Under Wychwood, Ascot Under Wychwood and Milton Under Wychwood. My doctor lives at Ascot under Wychwood and always moans that he can't listen to his show on a Monday night at 10 o'clock because the signal doesn't get there. So we thought, well, we don't really want to spend a lot of money for 780 people. We want to do it as cheap as we can. So I bought a rebroadcaster, which was ace. It would receive on one frequency and broadcast on another. And my advice would be to anybody that's thinking of buying a rebroadcaster, well, Sam can answer this, don't. Because they're an absolute nightmare to work. If anybody tells you the solution is a rebroadcaster, it's not. Just feed everything MPX, get yourself a decent processing piece of software that can handle relays, and just stick the internet in and rebroadcast like that, because it's so much easier. Rebroadcasters, you have to have a receiving antenna and filters and thousands of pounds worth of metal on a roof, when at the end of the day you can just put a SIM in a router and have the internet in the middle of nowhere in a farmer's field and put your signal there and broadcast to 780 people who are happy now in the Under Wychwoods. What it means for us as a station is our listenership massively grew, huge. In certain areas, Farringdon was a godsend. For 4,500 people, I never expected it to be really good, but we're the only radio station there. So all the tradespeople came to us. The council came to us. There was immediately, from the first thing we did there, which was the Christmas lights in 2022, everybody suddenly bought that we were their local station, which was great because it's called Whitney, which has got massive rivalry with Farringdon, and they hate Whitney. But they bought it because we were their local station. And that was the only resistance we got. People came to us and went, why are you called Whitney Radio? Because you're in Chippenham, or in Abingdon, or in Farringdon, or in Swindon. So we're going to change the name of the station. We're going to just initialise it. I came up with different names which everybody hated. Other people came up with different names which I hated. And so we decided just to initial Whitney Radio to WR. I'm very jealous of B Radio. That was the best thing you ever did by just calling it B, because it was nice and simple. And that's all it needs to be. And it's been really well received by advertisers, because they then said it's great because we had resistance of Whitney Radio being for Whitney, but we wanted to attract people from central Oxford or Chippenham or different areas. And so, to be honest, the best thing we ever did was to put forward a name change, because the advertisers are completely on board, and the length of their campaigns went from quarterly to see what it's like to half yearly or yearly. So it's really good. And we're a little volunteer station. Nobody's paid. We can't get money from Ofcom because of their community radio grant fund closed boys club, or whatever it's called. Just because I assume we've got relays. But we are quite good at it, completely by accident. Other people come to us and ask for help, and we're more than happy to share what we've done, because it's not rocket science, it's not big, it's not clever. It's just we've done it, and we've done it right. Nearly from the off, which is great. But nobody mentions the rebroadcaster now, so I shan't say any more on it. I'm going to keep it short because you're all really long on your tour. Thanks, Martin.
What hints and tips would you give, though, if no one's ever even thought, like, what's in
So why haven't you thought, look at a plot, get somebody to do a plot, go to an awful plot website, or pay somebody £100 to do you a plot of where you are, and then look at what you're not filling, and look at what's by where you're not filling. And if there's a big town near Reading, so for example, I mean, you know, I've been to your guys' transmitter when it was commissioned. It's great, you're in the middle of Reading. But is there somewhere close by Reading that the rent isn't as expensive, or there's a higher point that you can broadcast to? So, you know, it's easy to get. We're not in Whitney, we're just outside of Whitney, but it's the tallest building. So that's why we're there. It's a horrible estate that British Airways have bought, and they're putting loads of nice new units in. But they're not going to put my rent up because mine's a horrible little bit. But it's radio, it's not TV, it doesn't need to be. So the best thing to do is look at what's around you and cover areas, and then see what else you're going to cover. But also don't forget that if you get a relay, apply for a power increase on that relay. Don't think that because they've given you 50 plus 50, you can't go, actually, could I have 100 and do a bit more? Because Ofcom actually, if you talk to them sensibly and say, I don't really want to cover Oxford, but could I have covered that north bit of Oxford there? They'll go, yeah, okay, that's fine. However, my dream of 500 watts plus 500 watts is never going to happen in Whitney, apparently, which is such a shame. Hello.
Would AM not be more viable?
AM would be great. The trouble is, the man at your table and I have had a conversation about this. Yeah, absolutely, we know each other really well, the guy behind Sam. We've had loads of conversations about this, and AM should be fantastic. However, I did my usual survey of knocking on people who talk to me down the street where I live and borrowing their car keys and going to sit in their car. Most of them didn't have DAB. None of them had AM. And they all had FM. And as much as I love SSDAB and everything it stands for, it's a pig's ear. And even now, I would empty the bank account on relays on FM and ignore this white elephant that is SSDAB, unfortunately. But my other directors will probably have a different idea, and Whitney Radio, or WR, will probably end up on SSDAB before too long. But maybe not in West Oxfordshire. Yes, sir.
What's your TSA from what it was originally?
Brilliant. Sorry, that was going to be mentioned in the longer version, obviously, but thanks to his tour. Whitney itself is 25,000 people. These are 2011 surveys, so that might be slightly under what it is. We now take in a lot of fields and an awful lot of sheep. So if you add Chipper Norton, which is 7,000, everybody knows Chipper Norton's a really affluent area with all these people there. The Beckhams moved in. Harry Styles has bought a place. Somebody from Arsenal. But I can't disclose who that is because I have no idea who footballers are. But not huge populated areas. It's also one of the lowest forms. There is so much poverty in West Oxfordshire. The biggest food bank in the county in Chipper Norton. So those 7,000 people need something local. Farringdon is 4,500. Ensham is currently 5,000, but that will go up to 11,000 population. So in truth, the TSA probably hasn't gone up that much, maybe doubled. But I do know people who I've given advice to regarding relays who've gone from 50, 60, 70,000 to 250,000. And I think somebody in Ofcom then has a bit squeaky pants and sends an email to say, this is going to be your last one because you're quite big now. So Whitney is lucky in that we have lots of relays, but there is also lots of field and sheep. Whereas some areas which I could talk to you about, they have applied and they now cover a very big area and they are commercial stations. So just beware of your TSA and what your population's like, because if it gets too big too quick, Ofcom get nervous for some reason, which is odd really, because there aren't many small independent radio stations left in the United Kingdom. Sir? We have 6. We have 6, and if you're a statistician, he says, there is a station in Wales that's got 8. So I'm going to put one in the Cotswolds and then one in Banbury. So I'll be 8. No, I don't want to be, no, I'd rather be up there with the big boys, but not.
What's the average cost per relay?
Okay, so if you feed it with MPX, so MPX is digital, it's over IP. So you have a processor in Whitney, our base is in Whitney. It gets sent over the internet. Part of my biggest learning curve for starting Whitney is to let go, because there are clever people. In fact, you're sat next to one of them now who I'm incredibly jealous of. Yeah, that's that bloke from Wales there. It all happens by magic, and I just have a phrase which I use. I pick up the phone and a man happens. I do, however, know how much it costs, and each relay costs around £7,000. So that's transmitter, PC, internet, sadly, and then just a few bits and bobs and the twig that's on the roof. Reliability, it's fantastic because you have lots of alerts telling you you've gone off air or there's something, and we actually have alerts telling us things which don't make any difference on audio, but it just says this has hiccuped. The rebroadcaster I refer to in Chilston, which feeds the Underwitchwoods, cost me probably nearly £10,000 because we went for a rebroadcaster and it failed. It is still a test. We are feeding that via a 4G dongle. The great thing is probably from here to that wall at the end is a Vodafone mast. So that's quite handy because it's quite good speed. And it is in the middle of nowhere above Alex James's farm, which they're not going to be big internet users. So my signal is quite sturdy on a 4G SIM, but I'm not convinced it's the best way. But BT won't install a cable to the barn where the stuff is without asking me for 30 grand, which I can't afford.
Any other questions?
Is that it? Hello, Sam.
So as you know, loads of spectrum available for everywhere, and if you pressurise Ofcom, they give you those. Have you tried to just ask them for a single site?
So there were two options. So Whitney TV used to have a magic wand, and I used to say to people, if you had a magic wand, what would you do? If I could be rude and ask myself, there's two things I would like to do. The first thing, I would like to have a single frequency network across the whole of the sites. So nothing changes other than the fact they're all GPS synced and they're all on one frequency, because 99.9, regardless of the fact that I had an argument with Ofcom that there is no better frequency, apparently 100 FM is a better frequency. Who knows? But for marketing, I like 99.9. I'd like a single frequency network, and they're not really working properly yet, or will ever, on FM. My other magic wand is, why can't I have a kilowatt in Chipper Norton and turn everything else off, and then release all the other frequencies? I may be greedy and say, I don't want 107.4 in Chipper Norton, I want 99.9, because I like that frequency. But I'm sure it wouldn't be a problem. And the answer both times back from the regulator is, no, technology is not there yet. And you can read whatever you want into that. But I would love a single site with a kilowatt on, and turn all my power-hungry transmitters off and say to my landlords, I'm going to reduce your electric bill now. Do you think so? If only we knew somebody. Hello, Martin. Any other questions? If you are thinking of doing relays, and why wouldn't you? It's free. Power increases are free. Have you all got power increases? I won't ask you, it's fine. You got power increase? Yeah? So it's all free. Why wouldn't you apply for it and get it turned up? Have you guys got one in Reading?
It's the other one.
Oh. So it's free. All of this is free. It's just part of the legalisation that we can go through in the regulations. You just ask for a power increase because you want to cover that bit that you don't cover now. It's the best thing in the world. Just ask. The only thing is Ofcom now are getting a bit funny about you not implementing the power increase. So there's currently a station in the UK which I think is 4.5 years after they asked for one and they were granted one. I don't understand why they wouldn't just spend the money on a transmitter and turn their power up. It just seems insane to me. If I was still on 25 and 25, God, I'd invested in Slim Fast by then, I think, rather than carrying on with the radio station. But there we are.
Right. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks, Mum.